Woohoo! What is going on, everybody? Sorry for the delayed start. We got a little 5:40, 5:39-ish start going here. I'm your host, your only host, EverydayFFB, and today, got a good episode today. Gonna be talking a lot about just big old facts, big stats, things you wouldn't believe, things you would be shocked by. It's gonna be a good episode. So without further ado, let's just jump right on into things because that's how I always kick this show off. I jump right on into things. But before let's get things off, you guys can check me out on Twitter at EverydayFFB. You can see this. Follow me on Twitter there. I post all fantasy football stats. Big Detroit Lions fan, so I post Lions content. But if you're a Lions fan, check out my Lions Twitter at Honolulu Blues _. And of course, check out the Fantasy Six Pack website, podcast, all that good stuff. Subscribe to it if you haven't yet. You're getting a lot more than just this awesome show. So without further ado, let's just dive right on into our first, shocking stat, shocking fact, surprising fact, whatever you want to call it. But Mark Andrews, yes, Mark Andrews had more receiving yards than Tyreek Hill last year. I know that's something that should be said this year when Tyreek Hill is playing on the Dolphins. So you think Tyreek Hill playing with Pat Mahomes, that's insane. But yes, Mark Andrews had more receiving yards than Tyreek Hill. This is an interesting situation because Mark Andrews actually takes a big step up in my rankings with the departure of Hollywood Brown, and Tyreek Hill takes a small step back with, the trade of his going to Miami, pairing him up with Tua instead of Pat Mahomes. He also will have to compete with Jalen Waddle, who, was a target man there. Jalen Waddle received the 10th most targets last season as opposed to Tyreek Hill receiving the 7th most targets. So you got to imagine that's going to change. I would bet both finish in the top 14, 15, but pretty close together. Not to mention, they have Mike Gesicki, a pretty much big-bodied wide receiver who plays tight end. He received the 4th most targets out of any tight end. So Mike Gesicki is also a guy that he's going to steal targets, going to steal yards. So for me, this stat, it seemed shocking before the trades, but now, honestly, it's very more believable. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Mark Andrews had more receiving yards than Tyreek Hill once again. It seems like it's going to be there. The Dolphins, they added like 50 running backs: Chase Edmonds, Sony Michel, Raheem Mostert, and someone else. But there was a lot of running backs they added. So it seems interesting. But the Ravens, they let go of Hollywood Brown, leaving more targets for Mark Andrews. Bateman, yes, I think he could take the next step. But, Mark Andrews, he's that guy. He's got that connection with Lamar Jackson. All right, next fact up, we got Christian Kirk and Amari Cooper. Well, what did they have to do with anything? Well, Christian Kirk had more fantasy points than Amari Cooper last year, which seems kind of surprising because Amari Cooper, he played about a full season. He was injured, did have some weird things going on, some COVID issues, stuff like that. But, Christian Kirk finished with 169.1 points in half PPR scoring as opposed to Amari Cooper, who finished with 167.5. So this is really interesting, too, because both players are on new teams, get new quarterbacks, new offenses. So let's talk about it real quick. Amari Cooper gets a major upgrade because Dak Prescott's solid. But I think an upgrade with Deshaun Watson. Even though Watson may miss a few games, I think Amari Cooper should have one of, if not his best seasons. It feels weird, but I just feel like a new home. I feel like Amari and Deshaun will connect together. It seems like it's going to be a good, matchup. The Browns they added David Bell. They still got down to Peoples-Jones, but that's about it. There's no real wide receiver top target threat, not even at tight end with David Njoku or Harrison Bryant. Christian Kirk, he went on, took the money at Jacksonville, so he took a quarterback downgrade. Kirk gets Trevor Lawrence. I don't think this will happen again next year. Christian Kirk, I think he's going to take a little drop off. It's just going to happen. Going down from Kyler Murray to Trevor Lawrence. Not saying Trevor Lawrence is going to be bad, but I'm not a believer in the Jags system. I got to see it to believe it first. I want to see Lawrence do something special. I know Murray isn't the best passer, but he was solid. He was good enough. So let's move on to our next, fact. And this one may come to you as not a surprise, but this is more or less a little Deontay Johnson hype. And Deontay Johnson had the second most targets per game at 10.6. The only player with more, Cooper Kupp. So no surprise there that Cooper Kupp had more targets per game than Deontay Johnson, but it didn't, it would make a lot of sense. So Deontay Johnson, he does have a quarterback change. He's going with either Kenny Pickett or either Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, or God forbid, Mason Rudolph. That would be an interesting one. But all in all, Deontay Johnson, I think this is a bump for him. Ben Roethlisberger was just not Ben Roethlisberger. He seemed to be very, 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 very banged up, and like his arm was far, far gone. But Deontay made it work. He averaged 10.6 targets per game, was honestly a viable fantasy option, and honestly, going forward, he could be a top 12 receiver in a wide receiver one. So Deontay Johnson, do not sleep on him. He is a fantasy monster, despite the quarterback changes they got coming in. Next one up, this one is, not the biggest fact that's going to, make a huge fantasy difference for you, but, it might be able to do something for you. And that's Kenny Galladay and Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith, not so much, but Kenny Galladay. He had less touches than Le'Veon Bell. And I know it sounds like I was about to hype Kenny Galladay up, and then I just gave a terrible stat about him, but this allows people to really hate on Kenny Galladay and his value. He is at rock bottom. Like, there's no lower you can get than this. And granted, he had the worst season of his NFL career last year with the Giants. How much worse can it really get? They get a different coach in Brian Daboll, a guy who helped Josh Allen turn his career around. Not turn his career around, but, resurge his career. So it's going to be interesting to see if Daniel Jones can take just a baby step, albeit just a little bit better. Because if he is a little bit better than what he was last year, then, boy, that'll be a lot for Kenny Galladay and all the wide receivers. Now, they did add Wan'Dale Robinson, and they still have Kadarius Toney, Darius Slayton, and, of course, Sterling Shepard. But he did tear his Achilles, so him and Slayton are kind of like, they're kind of mace, Kadarius Toney and Wan'Dale, they are the two guys that could steal some targets, kind of make Kenny G have the life he had last year. So for me, this could be an opportunity to go pay, like a 2024 third rounder for Kenny Galladay. I'm sure a lot of, your league mates would give him up for absolutely the cheapest of the cheap. It wouldn't take a lot to acquire him, and he's at his rock bottom. I just don't see him going lower. We saw what he could do with a good quarterback. If Daniel Jones can just be competent, or somehow, he gets to a good offense. I don't know what happens. Trade happens, something. You never know. Anything random could happen. But my point is, he's more valuable than like a 2024 third or 2025 third or even 2023 third. Maybe, probably not. But you guys get what I'm saying. Kenny Galladay, he's pretty low. Next one up, I'm going to talk a little about my boy Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts had more rushing yards than Lamar Jackson last year. This dude was a little bit of a cheat code in fantasy football. He was my QB6 last year. I was extremely high on him. I'm even higher this year. I think he's going to finish as a top 5 quarterback. Jalen Hurts, he's just got the legs to do it. They added A.J. Brown. They beefed up their defense. I don't see a scenario where he doesn't be better than what he was last year. God forbid, the Jalen Hurts haters were right and he's a bust. But hey, if he is, then we can hop off that train fast. So for me, I'm not too worried. I think Hurts will be fine. We also saw Josh Allen have, he wasn't too far behind. Jalen Hurts had 784 rush yards, Lamar Jackson 767, and Josh Allen with 763. So Hurts didn't, go crazy above and beyond, but he did beat him in the total yards, although Lamar did miss a couple games. One thing I will say about Jalen Hurts is he had a nose for the end zone. If it was just scoring touchdowns or, kind of getting in the end zone or what. But only 5, yes, just 5 players in the NFL had more touchdowns than Jalen Hurts, rushing touchdowns, I should say. And that was Austin Eckler, James Conner, Jonathon Taylor, Joe Mixon, and Damian Harris, which, 4 of those are pretty elite running backs. Damian Harris, He's good, but with the Patriots system, that's just not going to happen again. So Jalen Hurts, this dude, he's going to get in the end zone. He faces my boys, the Lions, week 1. I'm going to get to see him live week 1. I'm going there to Ford Field, so that'll be fun. And hopefully he does not torch my Detroit Lions. Hopefully Jerry Jacobs and company keeps him in check. But that's a whole nother story. So Jalen Hurts, he obviously gets a bump with his boy A.J. Brown. So that's going to be interesting to see that new duo in the NFL. Next up, let's talk some Gabe Davis. I mean, this guy was an interesting player that a lot of people thought was going to break out earlier in the season, and he was just kind of like overshadowed by Cole Beasley and Emmanuel Sanders, and then Dawson Knox was breaking out, and he couldn't really, have his breakout moment. And finally, we get to the playoffs, and lo and behold, this dude goes berserker. He has more touchdowns in 2 playoff games than DJ Moore did in the entire season, which is a knock on DJ Moore's touchdown rate and I guess a bump on Gabe Davis's, because this dude can get in the end zone. I don't know what it is, but Allen loves him when he gets in the red zone inside the 30, whenever. He's a great route runner. He just knows how to get open. Gabe Davis, he's a sneaky wide receiver. He's a guy that I feel like could have, a Darnell Mooney like finish, or Darnell Mooney like season that we expected last year of him. So it'll be good. I think Gabe Davis has really got his shot. They did not bring back Emmanuel Sanders. They cut Cole Beasley. Pretty much the only person that's his threat is rookie wide receiver Hill Shocker, who is a rookie. So not much. But for one, let's flip to the other side. DJ Moore. He's a bit concerning. I mean, he did his touchdowns, I just don't know what's going on. Like, people keep saying, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. But it doesn't. So maybe that's just his thing. Maybe he just doesn't find the end zone and he's a yards guy. And honestly, it seems like it, but we don't want to believe it. So for me, DJ Moore, I need to see him with an elite quarterback, or I'm not going to believe he's ever going to be a high touchdown rate guy. And if you're not a high touchdown rate guy on, a weak offense, then it's tough. Also, you got CMC coming back, so it could be good, help out the offense, get them to, the end zone more, but we'll see. Next up, this is an interesting one. Elijah Mitchell. He had more yards after contact than, I'll let you guys guess. Think for a second. Who do you have more yards after contact than? It was Derrick Henry. And now you're thinking, oh, Derrick Henry got injured. Well, he had less carries than Derrick Henry, even before the injury, even all that. So Elijah Mitchell had more yards after contact than Derrick Henry with less carries. So that's pretty good. We know Derrick Henry as, the beast, the dude that just cannot be tackled. This was a really interesting stat because the 49ers went out and grabbed a running back in the 3rd or 4th round. It was like Trevor or Tavius Pierce. I got a long name guy. Can't think of it right now, but they did add some depth. You know how Shanahan is. He's just so freaking weird. He just switches a different running back each year. If it's Mostert, if it's Jeff Wilson, if it's Sermon, if it's Mitchell, there's just tons of them. He just doesn't have a particular guy. So that's one reason why I'm not completely sold on Elijah Mitchell. But this dude's a great runner, and he deserves to have that RB1 spot in San Fran. So if he can hold that down, not let Jeff Wilson or, Sermon have their moments and just keep him in check, then Elijah Mitchell, he's going to be a value because I know there's a lot of people that are trying to fade him. So Elijah Mitchell, don't fade him completely. I know a lot of you might not be high on him, but this is a guy who I think he has something. I really do, and I think he can be a solid RB1 if he gets that, workload. So my one concern is Deebo Samuel, and that's my next guy I'm talking about. And Deebo Samuel averaged 3 catches per game over the last 8 games. Nothing to do with Elijah Mitchell and his running. I mean, kind of, because he only averaged 3 catches per game over the last 8 games, which would mean he's run the ball more. So he's taking away carries from Elijah Mitchell. But nonetheless, this was interesting. Deebo Samuel, he was a guy that clearly played better, was better with Trey Lance. And by that, I'm going to say that Trey Lance had a 32% target share to Deebo Samuel when he was starting or even when he was in the game. 32% is a huge number as opposed to 22% Jimmy G's target share for Deebo Samuel. I know I'm wording this really weird, but Deebo Samuel received a 22% target share from Jimmy Garoppolo and a 32% target share from Trey Lance. So Trey Lance was looking his way much more times. And this includes, so the stat I mentioned, I said the last 8 games that he averaged just 3 catches per game. Well, in one of those last 8 games, Trey Lance was the starter. So Trey Lance targeted him 6 times in that game. I believe he had 3 catches, so he did hit his mark. But it just goes to show that Jimmy G, I don't know what it is, but he can't release the beast of Deebo. So Trey Lance, if you're a Deebo Samuel truther, you're gonna want to be rooting for Trey Lance. This guy needs to start. If he does, I want Deebo Samuel in all my leagues. A 32% target share is absolutely ridiculous. I know there's other guys there like Ayuk and George Kittle, but Deebo wanted to prove himself. He wanted not to prove himself, but he wanted to show, NFL GMs, coaches, whatever, that he's a wide receiver 1, not a hybrid back. So I really think we're going to see some more targets. I don't think we're going to see, the rushes toned down. I just think we're going to see more targets and more, receptions for Deebo. I think he's going to get just a massive workload this year. He's a guy that I really like this year in fantasy football. My final stat, I'm going to round it out with, I believe my final stat, I went a little out of order. Yep. All right. It is my final one. Jonathon Taylor. This one's interesting. He had 18 carries that finished inside the 5-yard line that didn't result in him scoring a touchdown. Now, this is absolutely blasphemy because this is a guy that gets tackled inside the 5-yard line. And what the Colts do? They give the touchdown to someone else. 9 times out of 10, you're getting your running back that touchdown. He's coming back in to finish the job. Granted, he might have been tired. He might have gotten 3 straight carries before this, yada, yada, yada. But 18 carries that finished inside the 5-yard line that didn't result in him scoring. Oh, by golly, holy crap. We haven't seen Jonathon Taylor's ceiling. We honestly haven't. I know he had a phenomenal game, phenomenal season last year, had all the touchdown 100-yard games in a row. But man, adding Matt Ryan to this offense, Jonathon Taylor can really, really have a Christian McCaffrey type season where he's just posted 30-pointers left and right. And this is why, Jonathon Taylor is the clear-cut RB1 right now. And even in redraft, I think he is too. So I'm going to need to see CMC, Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, any of the boys, make their healthy mark before I flip from Jonathon Taylor to Derrick Henry, etc., CMC for my number 1 overall spot in redraft. But that is all I got for today's episode. Thank you guys for listening in. Shout out to all the people joining in, listening live. Shout out to Fantasy Sick Pack for hosting me on their podcast website, YouTube page, whatever. Give them a subscribe, a like, a review, all that good stuff. They got tons of other podcasts for baseball, other fantasy sports. Plenty of good stuff on there. Check out fantasysixpack.net. They got it all over there. And as always, check me out, EverydayFFB on Twitter. I'm posting tons of fantasy football content. And once again, I teased this last episode, but we're going to be, once the ball's rolling now, we're going to be getting some good guests on. So guys, I already talked to my boy Andrew Erickson. He's down. He's coming in June. It should have been, late May, but I was late, dropped the ball on it. So he's coming in June. We're going to be getting more guests. Hopefully, guys like Troy King from Fantasy Football Guys, Yahoo, a bunch of good guests. So it's going to be fun. Thank you all for joining, and I will see you all next week.